Finally tonight, CBS's Steve Hartman goes on the road for a story about a Minnesota bus driver who gave one person a lift and the rest of us hope.
Nothing gets past Minneapolis bus driver Jane Arndt Verhelst. Tire pressure, seats clean, all systems go. But recently, Jane noticed a problem outside her bus. It was about a month ago. She was approaching this intersection when she saw a woman standing in the middle of the road.
And then when I opened up the door, that's when I really saw her. I saw her from head to toe, and I was just like, wow.
The woman, who appeared to be homeless, wasn't wearing any shoes.
I can't imagine what it's like walking around in bare feet on the hot pavement, and just nobody sees you. She's just kind of invisible, you know?
You don't have any shoes.
But not to Jane, who immediately took the shoes off her own feet.
Here's one, here's another.
And gave them to her.
No, she's getting my shoes. Oh, okay.
I knew that you're not supposed to drive in your socks. It's a big no-no. But I couldn't help it.
Come on in, you guys.
Several riders witnessed that moment, but perhaps no one was more touched by it than this woman. Sarah Selden had been homeless before. She knows how meaningful a simple kindness can be.
It really affected me because it was like, oh my gosh, she sees this woman.
We're often told to put ourselves in someone else's shoes. But in certain moments, it's almost more important to let that someone stand in ours. Steve Hartman, on the road in St. Paul, Minnesota.
Finally tonight, you never know what event or person will change your life. CBS's Steve Hartman goes on the road for a story about a warning that turned into a blessing.
When those blue lights appeared in her rear view, then 20-year-old Abby Rutledge knew she'd done the wrong thing at the wrong place and time. But now, 2 years later, she sees that run-in differently.
I think it was the right person, right time, and the right words said.
The cop who pulled her over for speeding that day was Alabama State Trooper J.T. Brown. Abby told Trooper Brown she couldn't afford a ticket, that she was broke and in a dead-end job.
And I told her, I said, well, how about we talk about it then?
It went on for about 10, 15 minutes, just talking about different career paths.
You be safe.
Their conclusion? That Abby would make a really good nurse. So, Brown gave her a warning. On this one condition, promise me you'll go to scrub or nursing school and slow down, and I won't give you a ticket.
Could you have ever imagined that she would take it as seriously as she did?
Never.
As soon as he left and as soon as I got to where I was going, I started pushing myself toward that career, and now I'm here.
And now she's here, working as a surgical technician at the University of Alabama Birmingham Hospital. Abby says she loves her new job and gives full credit to Trooper Brown, who was at her graduation.
I wanted him to see the impression he made on me. 5 minutes talking to anybody, even if you don't know them, can make the largest impact of their life ever.
And you never know when.
You never know when it could happen, no.
Trooper Brown went above and beyond license and registration to guidance and motivation.
Still got this.
And by taking the advice written on that warning, Abby not only helped herself, she returned the exact same favor.
She made my entire career worth it.
Steve Hartman.
She did.
On the road.
I'm proud of you.
In Birmingham, Alabama.
Finally tonight, CBS's Steve Hartman goes on the road for a remarkable journey of friendship forged by tragedy.
Thank you, Lord.
In a small apartment building in North Minneapolis, a 59-year-old teacher's aide sings praise to God for no seemingly apparent reason. Indeed, if anyone was to have issues with the Lord, it would be Mary Johnson.
For all you've done for me. He never had a chance.
As we first reported in 2011, Mary's son, Laramian, was murdered during an argument at a party. He was 20 and Mary's only child.
My son was gone.
The killer was a 16-year-old kid named O'Shea Israel.
I wanted justice. He was an animal. He deserved to be caged.
And he was. Tried as an adult and sentenced to 25.5 years, O'Shea served 17 before moving back into the old neighborhood, close to Mary. This close.
He lives next door.
Next door.
How a convicted murderer ended up living a door jam away from his victim's mother is a story not of horrible misfortune, as you might expect, but of remarkable mercy.
What'd she say to you?
I believe the first thing she said was, look, you don't know me, I don't know you, let's just start with right now. And I was befuddled myself.
That was when he was still in prison. Once released, they met regularly, until one day Mary introduced O'Shea to her landlord and invited him to move next door.
Unforgiveness is like cancer. It will eat you from the inside out. It's not about that other person. Me forgiving him does not diminish what he's done. Yes, he murdered my son, but the forgiveness is for me. It's for me. Yes, Lord.
It's been 13 years since we first told this story. O'Shea and Mary stayed close. He walked her down the aisle when she got married, and sadly, was also a pallbearer at her funeral.
Yes, Lord.
It's like losing a biological mom. You know, it wasn't no difference with me and her.
Mary died earlier this year.
She had such a peaceful look on her face, though, as if, like, you know, her work is complete. She's done what she could here.
O'Shea says it's now up to the rest of us to follow her lead. Steve Hartman, CBS News, on the road.
Finally here tonight, when it comes to giving back, money is important, but caring is priceless. Here's CBS's Steve Hartman on the road.
We return this week to Toledo, Ohio, to Scott High School, to see what became of all those seniors who walked into this gym 4 years ago and got the surprise of a lifetime.
If you're sitting here in this room today, tuition, room and board, books and fees will be paid for you, and you will go to college for free.
Philanthropist Pete Cadens started this charity called Hope Toledo for kids like Chris Rowland. Chris told me he could have never afforded college, especially after his mom, Abina, lost her job and his dad died in a house fire.
My dad was the closest person I had in my life.
He was such an awesome father. If he's still going to make him proud, I know he is.
4 years later, the first kids are graduating, but only about half will end up with a degree, which means for every joyous celebration, there is a dream deferred. Like that of Chris Rowland.
It's a lot that I've been through.
Shortly after starting college, Chris's brother, Javon, was murdered.
But yeah, still dealing with it.
How did it affect your school?
My grades took a dwindle. They went completely downhill.
To the point where Chris quit school, struggled to hold a job, and got in with the wrong crowd. He gave up on Hope Toledo, but not all hope was lost. Because from that first day in the gym to now, Pete Cadens has stayed in Chris's life. Through all the missteps and blown opportunities, Pete has been there, mentoring, lecturing, feeding, and fathering.
What do we need to do to help you?
And because of Pete's ever-presence, today Chris Rowland is back on track, finishing his freshman year here at Lourdes University in Sylvania, Ohio.
You know what I realized along this journey, Steve, is that if all we do is give them money, they're not going to make it. You have to look at all the different things that create a successful student and a successful person, despite your struggles.
Most importantly, commitment, long-term commitment.
Pete has always constantly been there. When I gave him plenty of reasons to stop believing me, he stayed and he's still sticking it out with me. So Pete he's something special. It's hard to put in words.
I think he just did. Steve Hartman on the road in Toledo, Ohio.
Veterans Day is Monday. Tonight we end the week with a salute to a fallen hero World War II. Here's CBS's Steve Hartman on the road.
Being out like that.
Before she was even born,
This is him?
That's my dad.
Jerry Eisenhower's dad, Army Private William Walters, got shipped off to World War II. All the family got back was his body and a letter that said he died somewhere in France.
That's it?
That's it. I just always wondered where he died, how he died. It was just a little part of a puzzle piece that was missing in my life.
She just didn't have any stories about her dad.
Jan Moore is Jerry's daughter.
Was the family resigned to the fact that you would never know?
Yeah, pretty much.
Until a few months ago. Jerry was at her home in Syracuse, Nebraska, when she got a message. It was from a small village in France, and it read, in part, "On the occasion of the 80th anniversary of the liberation of France, we pay tribute to Private William Walters."
We were looking for our soldier. We did not know that he was their soldier too.
In August 1944, American troops began liberating the village of Grace-sur-Loing. It was a joyous day, but there was one casualty. While crossing the river into town, Private Walters' boat capsized and he drowned at the age of 20. This past summer, an historian from Grace-sur-Loing tracked down Walters' family and invited them to France to honor their shared hero and the sacrifice he made here. As one eyewitness explained, they went looking for him and found him. They did a lot of things to try to revive him, but it didn't work.
He showed me where they laid him.
He was here.
And they covered him with flowers. It's just amazing, the care that they gave him.
This week, she returned to her father's grave.
First time I've been here and had the answers.
Jerry says she now feels at peace.
It's a good feeling.
And it's all thanks to the grateful people of France, who even 80 years on, still see America through the prism of our better angels. Steve Hartman, on the road, in Syracuse, Nebraska.
Finally tonight, the measure of a true friend is someone you can count on even at your lowest moment. Here's CBS's Steve Hartman on the road.
You may not recognize him out of costume, but this is David Hobbs. 5 years ago, back in his hometown of Clarksdale, Mississippi, David was arrested in this alley for breaking into a backyard shed. He was dressed as Captain America. So, of course, the next day, pictures of the handcuffed superhero went viral. Cable networks and newspapers around the world made him into their laughingstock.
I truly felt as if my life was over. All these people were talking about me, making fun of me, and I'm like, man, what an embarrassment I am to my family.
Aside from family, David says one of the few not laughing was childhood friend Trey Lewis.
After I got my mind around the details of it, I mean, it was just sadness. I mean, obviously this is drug-induced.
He was right about that. David had been an addict his entire adult life. Fortunately, his old friend Trey, who he hadn't seen in 20 years, now owned Good Landing Recovery, a treatment program based in Decula, Georgia.
I came here with a suitcase full of dirty clothes and a half a cigarette. That's all I had when I got to rehab, bro.
Trey let him go through the program for free.
And I'll have 5 years clean, you know?
Which is why David now looks back at that infamous picture fondly. The worst day of his life. Now, his best.
Yeah, what was meant to destroy me actually was the stepping stone to rebuilding me.
Is there a lesson in that?
I think so. If you still have breath in your lungs and you're still alive, there's a chance. You can turn it around. Oh, man.
And you can help turn it around for others.
First treatment now.
Okay, get it, baby.
Today, David works at Good Landing.
Bro, you're doing amazing, bro.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How many people do you think he's helped?
Hundreds.
Wow. Really?
I mean, that's conservative. By this time next year, probably thousands.
David Hobbs.
All those things matter.
Superhero, after all. Steve Hartman on the road in Decula, Georgia.
Finally tonight, CBS's Steve Hartman goes on the road to witness the miracle of a mother's love.
For Peggy Means of WWII, Michigan, Mother's Day was just another X on the calendar. Just another day without her daughter. In 2017, Jennifer was critically injured in a car crash. She was 35.
On life support?
Yeah.
And did the doctor tell you she wasn't going to make it?
He said that she's not going to wake up, And of course I collapsed, It was terrible.
Her only daughter in a coma with virtually no chance of ever coming out of it. And yet, Peggy refused to let doctors pull the plug.
Did you question your decision at any point?
No.
Not after year 1?
No.
Year 2, 3, 4, 5?
Never. I just couldn't let her go.
One by one, Jennifer's friends stopped visiting. Even her husband moved on with his life. And yet, almost every day, her mom was there to comfort and care, and always talking to her, as if Jennifer could actually understand, which of course, she couldn't. Until she could. It started with a laugh. Jennifer had been off life support, but still in a coma, when her mom said something funny. And that was it.
Oh, Lord have mercy.
A year later, Jennifer came home. Although she still can't walk and struggles to speak, her mind is sharp and her heart filled with joy.
What's the best part about being back among us? Everything?
Yeah.
She especially loves visiting with her boys. And as for Peggy, the mom who made these moments possible, this Mother's Day may be her best one ever. Because even though she won't be getting flowers or candy, Jennifer can now muster those words that matter most and deliver them as sincerely as they've ever been spoken.
You love your mom.
Yeah.
Steve Hartman, on the road in WWII, Michigan.
CBS's Steve Hartman goes on the road to a small southern town where the simple act of giving someone a lift became a ride-sharing service for the soul.
In Cabot, Arkansas, just as the sun begins to set over the local Walmart, store janitor Bill Majalewski begins walking to work for his overnight shift. He will trek 5 miles, 2 hours, in any weather.
Pouring rain, you're walking 2 hours each way.
Yeah, I don't call out. I want to work.
He's gonna go to work no matter what.
Snow?
Snow, I picked him up at 9 degrees the other morning. Let's go.
A couple years ago, Christy Conrad saw Bill out walking and offered him a ride. She got to know him, learned about his daunting daily commute and how he's also legally blind. So she began driving him whenever she could. At least, that's how it started.
Why did you feel the need to do more?
I can't be always there,
So what was your plan?
Mr. Bill's Village.
Mr. Bill's Village is a Facebook group Christy started a couple months ago. She was hoping to find just a few volunteers to keep an eye out for Bill when he's walking.
And within days, it exploded.
It caught on really quick. And now it's like everyone's competing to give Mr. Bill a ride. They'll click and see, is Mr. Bill out walking? Is he headed to town?
So people are just driving around the streets looking for him?
Pretty much. Just like where's Waldo, but where's Mr. Bill? Yeah. It's nice to see.
Today, the group has 1,500 members. In fact, here comes one now.
Hey, Mr. Bill. Do you need a ride to Walmart?
Oh, certainly.
All right. Come on, hop on in.
You always get picked up now.
Pretty much. Yeah.
And it's always somebody different.
It's never the same person from one day to the next.
That's amazing.
There's a lot of good people in this world, all over the place,
And on that note, here's one more good person.
I'm pretty good.
Chris Puckett is a car dealer. He wanted to give Bill a vehicle.
I wasn't aware that you couldn't drive.
But since Bill can't drive,
I'm legally blind.
I got you.
He handed the key to Christy instead, putting the car in karma.
I don't even know what to say. Bill, go get in that front seat. Go over there.
Doing unto others. It's how they roll here in Mr. Bill's village.
Thank you.
Steve Hartman, on the road in Cabot, Arkansas.
Finally tonight, CBS's Steve Hartman goes on the road with a story about dreams, resilience, and never taking no for an answer.
Although born without hands or feet, 25-year-old Zach Anglin says the only limbs he ever longed for were wings. Always wanted to be a pilot. Unfortunately, no quad amputee had ever become a commercial pilot.
Obviously, nothing worth having comes easy.
From the time he was born, he was a disciplined and determined child.
Adoptive parents Harold and Patty say there was no talking him out of it. So when Zach turned 18, he applied to a flight school that said no.
There's nothing we can really do for you. We're sorry.
The second one said the same.
Like, here we go again.
As did the third.
The same response.
And so it went, more than a dozen times over.
You're not hearing what they're saying.
I'm not. Selective hearing. My wife will tell you I'm a little bit hard-headed.
Which is why this hard-headed husband and soft-hearted father applied to one more school, the Spartan College of Aeronautics in Tulsa, Oklahoma. They said yes, although Zach's struggle was just getting started.
He still needed approval from the Federal Aviation Administration to take the lessons. But the FAA repeatedly, and in no uncertain terms, denied his request. And after the 5th rejection letter, Zach finally gave up.
I was like, this is not for me. This is impossible to do. And so my mom was over my shoulder at this point, right? And then she's like, you're not done yet.
I said, you can never succeed until you've learned to fail.
And Patty says her son obviously hadn't failed enough. So Zach kept at it until finally they cleared him for one takeoff. And when Zach was given the opportunity to show his potential, it became clear as blue sky that you don't need hands to have wings. Zach graduated from flight school a few years ago and now teaches the same course so many told him he couldn't even take.
Nautical miles.
Why do people need to hear this?
Because my story isn't just for amputees. We all go through trials and tribulations. The word impossible is an illusion behind the word possible.
And failure, just the turbulence on your journey. Steve Hartman, on the road in Tulsa.
Finally tonight, Steve Hartman goes on the road with a man using the power of music to honor his past and provide hope for the future.
What would compel a man, a retired businessman, to become a street performer, playing for bills in a bucket at the age of 83? Is it love? Loss? Purpose?
Yes, yes, yes. On our honeymoon.
Larry Kingsley says the love part is Georgianne, his wife of 23 years.
Did she always put her head right there? Usually. I liked it there.
Unfortunately, she's also the loss part. 4 years ago, Georgianne was diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease.
And the doctor says, you know, it's going to be difficult. I said, I know, but I'm married to her, so I'm going to be with her.
And with her, he was. When Larry got out the old trumpet he bought back in his Air Force days and started playing 3 times a week on a sidewalk in Cary, North Carolina. Larry says Georgianne loved it, although she was confused.
In fact, she used to yell at him. "Why don't you get a real job?" she'd say. Assumed he was out here panhandling. And Larry laughed it off, knowing that, in a way, this had become his job, his mission.
Every donation goes toward finding a cure. Every dollar, a fulfillment of Larry's newfound purpose.
The day that she died, I played that night.
Wow.
But in my mind, I just say the show goes on.
After Georgianne died last year, Larry started playing 6 nights a week. He has now raised more than $15,000 and has vowed to keep it up until Alzheimer's is just a memory. Steve Hartman, on the road in Cary, North Carolina.
Finally tonight, CBS's Steve Hartman visits an old friend who likes giving complete strangers the benefit of the doubt. We find out why on the road.
From a desperate place across the Atlantic, a suspicious message went out. My name is Joel from Liberia, West Africa. I need some assistance from you, business or financial assistance that will help empower me. And 6,000 miles away, a stranger answered.
I just wanted to go down this rabbit hole and see what were the tricks that they used to get people.
You were wrong about him.
So I took him for a scammer, but he showed me that there was a different side to him.
As we first reported in 2018, Ben Taylor of Ogden, Utah befriended the stranger and helped him help himself. He worked with Joel to make a little booklet about his life.
And I sold it online to whoever was interested in the story or whoever was just interested in helping a guy out.
And from those sales, Joel was able to earn hundreds of dollars.
Is this your home?
Oh yeah, this is my home.
Ben even visited to see the results of their partnership firsthand.
Brand new roof.
It looks good, man.
Yeah.
As you might expect, after that story first aired, lots of people tried to seize on Ben's kindness. His spam folder blew up with supposedly desperate pleas. Like the woman in Cameroon who said she needed money for reconstructive plastic surgery. The same letter had been circulating on the internet for years. It was even posted on a scam reporting website.
But I read into her story and it felt like something that I couldn't ignore.
So you believe somebody again?
I did a lot of work to kind of get to the bottom of it.
Turns out the story is true. Chica Ordery had a botched surgery as a child that left her with intermittent but excruciating pain.
Hi, Chica Ordery.
So, a couple months ago,
It's me, Mr. Ben.
Ben did as he'd done before.
How are you?
Flew to see the woman so many others had written off as a scammer and showed her the book.
This is the book
that would pay for her operation.
that you wrote. It's just a lot of fun to see people kind of be the hero of their own story. Hi, Chica Ordery. You look like someone who just got out of surgery.
Thanks to you, Mr. Ben.
Twice now, Ben Taylor has gone halfway around the world to help a stranger and inspire you. Not to go answer your spam mail, just open your mind to the possibility that some people may be better than you think.
Yeah, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Steve Hartman, CBS News, on the road.
Finally tonight, CBS's Steve Hartman goes on the road with a Memphis gym owner who found building muscle is nothing compared to building someone's character.
It's okay.
Here at the God Body Gym in Memphis, owner Roderick Duncan says real change never happens overnight.
10.
But he says it always starts in an instant.
7.
Or in this case, an instant
4.
cup of coffee.
2. Time.
A few months ago, Roderick says he noticed someone behind his gym.
Saw this guy sitting in the vehicle.
He says the man was sleeping in one of his old cars.
Homeless?
Homeless guy, had to be.
So, camera rolling, he opened the door and told him to get out.
Come on, get up out my car, man.
And because the door doesn't lock, the next day, same problem.
Look at you, man.
And he kept coming back.
He kept coming back.
And so it went, until Roderick tried a different approach.
Before I could knock on the window, I said, you know what? I came back in here, I made him a cup of coffee.
And on those grounds, Roderick began to build a relationship with 24-year-old Brian Taylor. He learned about his troubled childhood and his drinking problem, and then got him some clothes, took him to get an ID, and drove him to job interviews. He even gave him a spot on his couch.
Brian says he couldn't be more grateful, but he doesn't always show it, whether not following the rules or violating a trust. Roderick says there have been many times over the past few months where he's told Brian, that's it, that's the last straw. And every time, it's not.
Some people need more than one chance. You know, some people, it takes a while for most kids to stop bumping their head. You always have to work on you.
And that patience may be the greatest gift he's given this young man.
Everything you did yesterday is what got you in the situation today. So everything you do today is going to be preparing you for tomorrow.
And both men agree. Tomorrow is looking brighter.
I got a job. I got more confidence. I got a smile on my face.
Good thing. Because Roderick says if Brian messes up one more time, he's done helping.
That's it.
Why do I not believe that?
Well, I don't believe it either.
Unconditional love.
It's crazy.
Forgiveness to a fault. Steve Hartman, on the road in Memphis.
CBS's Steve Hartman finds that sometimes the best lessons happen on the bus ride home from school. Here's this week's On the Road.
It was end of day for students at Carter Middle School in Warren, Michigan. But for those on bus 46 that April afternoon, it was the beginning of an unforgettable ordeal.
And all of a sudden, the brakes get slammed. We all were just terrified and shocked.
And that's when I looked up and saw him.
7th grader Dylan Reeves had grabbed the steering wheel. Soon after, police called the boy's father and stepmother, Steve and Iretta.
Are you the parent of Dylan Reeves? And I said, yes. And I go, what do you do? And he goes, no, this is a good phone call. Your son's a hero. He stopped the bus.
Stopped the bus?
What? What?
The officer went on to explain, and security footage shows how Dylan noticed the driver was having a medical emergency and immediately sprang from his seat.
I just knew what to do in that moment. The bus was swerving off the road.
So Dylan took the wheel, hit the brake, and gained control of the situation, saving driver and students.
Someone call 911.
A true hero, no doubt. But we still had a question. Why didn't anyone else notice what was happening? Well, turns out,
Had my AirPods in.
virtually every kid
I was looking at my phone.
was on a device.
I was on my phone playing a little game.
We hear a lot about the consequences of too much screen time. But one thing I never considered until now is the loss of situational awareness. What's happening around them? And yet somehow, at least one kid on that bus instantly recognized what was happening. Any guesses as to why?
I know why, because my son does not have a cell phone.
And Steve says that's the lesson here.
What else are you going to do when you don't have a phone? You're going to look at people, you're going to notice stuff, you're going to look out the window. It's a very powerful lesson. Maybe change the world kind of lesson, I don't know.
At least a save the bus kind of lesson. And they say reason enough to hold off getting him a phone for another day.
How do you feel about that?
Whatever. My parents are old school,
But for good reason.
I guess.
Sometimes even heroes have it hard. Steve Hartman, on the road, near Detroit.
Finally tonight, CBS's Steve Hartman brings us a story about how forgiveness can lead to redemption on the road.
The man in the green hoodie is Harrisburg, Pennsylvania City Councilman Ralph Rodriguez, trying to scare away a would-be burglar.
He was at this window?
Literally at the window. I saw him prying into here.
The guy was trying to break into the office of a nonprofit Rodriguez runs.
He just kind of took off.
Just kept running
Just
that
kept
way.
going, yep.
All the perpetrator left behind was this grainy image on a doorbell camera. So he could have gotten away with it if only he hadn't reached out to Rodriguez on social media, offering his name and his confession. I have to be willing to face the consequences, and that is what I'm ready to do.
For most crime victims, that would be case closed. But for Ralph Rodriguez, it was opportunity opened. He didn't want to add another young man to the prison rolls, especially one with no prior criminal record. So instead of pressing charges, he pressed for answers. So you decide to meet this guy?
Absolutely. And I actually took the time to hear his story, see the environment in which he lives in, and I get it. Poverty has a way of pushing you to do things that you would have never imagined you were even capable of doing.
22-year-old Rashawn Turner agreed to talk with us, on condition we not show his face.
I made a severe lapse in my judgment that night. My father was struggling with basic needs, and I was like, I can't sit here and just wait for what little we still have to be taken away. I have to do something.
And when Ralph Rodriguez heard that, he did something.
Making sure he's financially good and has just some clothes on his back.
So you started sending him money?
Absolutely.
The guy who just tried to rob you?
Absolutely, yep. Because what he doesn't need anymore is any more disappointments. I'm pretty sure people have told him things in his life and dropped the ball 10 out of 10 times. It's just not what I'm prepared to do. And that's what you're bringing. Look,
so Rodriguez turned the other cheek.
See how close we got to that?
Gave him part-time work painting the very place he just tried to burglarize and set him up with job training.
See that?
I thought that there would be no one willing to help me, but you never know, you just have to ask. But I wasn't willing to ask.
What are you going to do with this chance?
Not waste it.
Let me look up this permit test.
Ralph Rodriguez, the best kind of crime fighter.
You just need a shot.
Steve Hartman.
I'd be remiss if I didn't try my best to get you that shot, man.
On the road in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
In tonight's On the Road, CBS's Steve Hartman has the story that expands the definition of being a good neighbor and what it means to be family.
Days don't come much worse than this.
Is he your husband?
Yes.
In January of 2021, Jean LeVar's husband of 58 years died in their home. And when the Glendale, Arizona police entered the building, they found such terrible living conditions, they had to condemn her house.
So all in one day, you lose your husband and you're homeless.
Mm-hmm.
Did you expect what would happen next?
No, that was a surprise.
Carmen Silva happened next. She lives across the street. And although she barely knew those neighbors, when she learned that Jean had no kids or family to turn to,
I told her, don't worry, Jean, we're going to fix it.
You know, it's one thing to be neighborly, but you've taken it to the extreme.
I don't see that.
You don't see that?
Mm-mm. I've always taught my kids to take care of their elders.
So, even though the Silvas live in a small 3-bedroom house with 8 children, they made room for one more. The boys gave up their bed to sleep on the couch, eagerly welcoming their new adopted grandmother.
She looks very happy, and I believe it's because she has a whole family now.
Do you feel like you found a family?
Mm-hmm.
Finally?
Mm-hmm. It means everything. Just thinking about it.
There's nothing better than a loving home. Except maybe
Time to cut the ribbon.
2 loving homes. A nonprofit called Operation Enduring Gratitude, which helps Arizona veterans and their families, heard about Jean's plight. And since Jean's husband was a Navy vet, volunteers went full speed ahead, renovating her old house.
We're all joining together to do one thing, and that's to make somebody's life whole.
The house is condemned no more, and it's all hers and hers alone. But Jean plans to share it with the Silvas, because that's what families do. Steve Hartman, On the Road, in Glendale, Arizona.
We end this week, as we always do, on the road. And this one is special. CBS's Steve Hartman found a story of dedication and perseverance that hits close to home.
You're welcome to listen in, but I chose this week's story mainly for an audience of one. This 12-year-old named Ted.
Yes.
Ted is my nephew.
Very hard.
And he says sometimes his blindness feels insurmountable.
I see.
I thought like I was doomed. that does sound a little immature, but
A woe is me kind of feeling?
yes. I really want to be like everybody else sometimes, you know.
And that's why, when I heard about this drag racer attempting to set a new world speed record, I thought Ted and others like him had to meet the driver. In 2012, Dan Parker of Columbus, Georgia, got in a crash. He suffered a traumatic brain injury so severe it blinded him.
I never imagined I'd be back in the seat of a race car. But I've been a racer my whole life. I just had to figure out another way to do it.
A machinist by trade, Dan got adaptive equipment so he could make parts, and then designed this entire race car.
Everything in this car?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
That just amazes me. What does he look like?
Mustache and a beard?
I don't have a mustache.
You have a mustache?
See?
whiskers. I hope nobody sees them.
Oh, don't worry about it. That won't be an issue. Anyway, back to our story.
Last week, Dan and his crew came here to Spaceport America in southern New Mexico to attempt a Guinness record. Fastest car driven blindfolded. Of course, no blindfold was needed. But he did have a special audio guidance system and, for safety purposes, a sighted driver next to him, hands hovering over the steering wheel just in case. It wasn't necessary. Dan went 211 miles an hour, set a record, and more importantly, an example.
Ted, I want you to know that blindness is not what is stopping you. Surround yourself with believers and go for your dreams. You can make excuses or make it happen.
New Guinness World Records title.
Dan says inspiring the Teds of the world is the main reason he did this. And if my nephew is any indication, it was well worth the drive.
If you can do that, well, then I think I could easily pursue my dream.
Steve Hartman.
Wait, what about flying a plane?
CBS News, on the road.
That's exactly what I wanted to come from this.
Tonight, with so many families desperate for word on their loved ones in Florida, CBS's Steve Hartman has some thoughts on their pain and the importance of hope.
After enduring months of heartbreak and grief, another gut punch.
Search and rescue continues.
The building collapse in Surfside may end up being one of the largest losses of American lives from a single event since 9/11. And although there's no comparing the two, I was at the 9/11 memorial this morning, and I was struck by one exhibit that seemed especially relevant today. The one that captures the anguish of not knowing. You may remember after 9/11 all those missing posters, those desperate pleas that popped up on just about every flat surface in the city. 20 years later, the messages have gone online, but the suffering is the same.
Torture.
Ariana Hevia's mother was in the building.
I think I'm trying to brace myself for the worst and the best, and it's really hard. Just not knowing is just the worst part.
Iris Calderon has 6 family members in there.
The uncertainty is choking me inside.
The uncertainty is choking me inside, she said. Purgatory can be hell, and grief lies ahead for many. But for now, hope is providing a bridge across the abyss. And there's not a soul in South Florida that isn't holding on to that bridge for dear life. Steve Hartman, CBS News, New York.